And my doingness never felt enough. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Because you can never do enough.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah, it just never felt like I could do enough. I was playing a game that I could never win.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, no wonder I'm a perfectionist, an overachiever, and this mentality of no pain, no gain. So very wounded masculine thinking. And so that was the very beginning of my journey coming home to myself.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Flourish podcast. I'm so excited to have an amazing and very special friend, very special guest with us today, Rosalind Fung. Hi, Rosalind.
Thank you so much for having me, Abe.
I'm so glad you're here.
Very excited to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited too. Rosalind, we're located, our offices in Calgary. That's where we're shooting today, our studio. And Rosalind is all the way from Edmonton, right? So if you don't know the geography, it's like a 3-hour drive. So she came all the way down here for this, and that's awesome. Eh?
Maybe 2.5 if you're speeding.
That's right. But we don't do that.
We don't do that at all.
We don't want to get the big speeding tickets. But anyways, let me tell you a little bit about Rosalind because she's a very special friend. Her and her husband Dan. To my wife and I can tell you that we've known each other for maybe 10, 12 years now almost.
Yes. You knew me when I was a psychologist. So, yeah.
Which is really cool. So we want to get into her story, but she was a psychologist for many years and did some really cool stuff in that field, which she'll tell you about, but then actually left that and went into coaching. And how we met was, I was going to Edmonton doing coaching certification, and she was always sending people to my course.
Yes. And, we officially met on, this is why I love social media, Facebook.
Yep.
And, Facebook shows you people that you might know because you have mutual friends. And I was like, who's this?
Yeah.
Because you had a great smiling picture. I think you had a laughing picture and you were holding a mic.
Yeah.
And I had a similar profile picture too. I'm
That's
like,
true.
oh, I need to know this person.
This guy. Yeah. You're like, this dude ripped off my photo. And
we're twinning.
That's right.
I was wearing a pink blazer. I do remember that.
That's right. I don't have a pink blazer to wear, but I could probably rock it if I needed to, right? But such a heart-centered person. And, as we launched Flourishing, her husband and her, they actually became founding partners and investors in our company. And that's really our mission, is to change the world by changing the workplace and really enhancing families and communities and all of that kind of a thing. So really awesome to have you here today, Ross.
I'm so happy to be here, Abe.
Yeah.
So happy.
So this is all about you. So tell us a little bit about your journey, psychologist to coach and to business entrepreneur and leadership coach and all of that. So tell us about the story.
Okay, I have a very big journey. So let's start on the personal side. So in 2008, my life looked completely perfect on the outside.
Nice.
I had just started private practice as a psychologist.
Nice.
And I was a newlywed with my husband. And I was a second-degree black belt in karate.
Okay.
And a role model to kids, teens, and adults.
That's awesome. So don't mess with you either.
That's right.
Still have some
I am
skills.
a secret weapon.
Absolutely.
In many different ways.
That's awesome.
And I was very confident in everything that I did. But behind closed doors was a different story. I was really struggling. I was really struggling with feeling enough. And, I was only 25 at this point. Okay. I didn't realize I was struggling with not feeling enough. I know that sounds really silly, but I really didn't. I'm very high achieving, and I was always striving for the next thing. And it was like, okay, I did it. Okay, what's next? What's next?
Right.
What's next? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do a bodybuilding competition. Wow. So that, and then again, this is an unconscious thought that I had, but if I have this perfect body, then I'll finally be happy and complete and satisfied.
Interesting.
And so I wasn't conscious about these thoughts. Sure. So here I am standing on stage in 2008, June, at a bodybuilding figure competition. And I have this perfect physique, although I didn't think it was perfect at all. In fact, I thought I'm not lean enough, even though I had 6-pack abs, it just wasn't flat enough, and I just did not feel enough.
Wow.
And so deep inside, I was like, what is wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
I was also struggling with disordered eating.
Mm-hmm.
I would restrict my food because you have to restrict your food.
Mm-hmm.
And I would binge eat,
Mm-hmm.
then feel guilty, beat myself up. And my form of purging was over-exercising.
Okay. Wow.
Like big time, to do all that cardio to make up for the extra calories
Right.
that I ate.
Right.
And this happened for a really long time. And on that day on stage, I came in last place.
Oh, okay.
And I was completely devastated. How could I, after all these months, all these years of dedication, come in last place? If I work this hard and I don't get what I want.
Right.
And so that left me feeling so devastated. It got me spiraling down to a breakdown.
Huh.
And
Wow.
what happened at this point was I was actually, as a therapist, led to learn about this method called Haikomi.
Okay.
And what it means is, how do I stand in relationship with myself?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I stand in relationship with others? Because we're always in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
no matter the kinds of relationships.
Right.
And so it's an approach that combines neuroscience, psychology, and this thing called spirituality.
Nice.
And I'm like, all right. And of course, when you're learning something, you cannot not work on yourself. So I learned that I was unconsciously operating from this belief that I am valued in my doingness.
Right.
So my performance, my status, you know, my appearance,
Yeah.
how much money I was making, my titles, rather than my beingness, who I am. And my doingness never felt enough.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Because you can never like do enough.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah, it just never felt like I could do enough. I was playing a game that I could never win.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, no wonder I'm a perfectionist, an overachiever, and this mentality of no pain, no gain. So very wounded masculine thinking.
Yeah.
And so that was the very beginning of my journey coming home to myself.
That's awesome.
And I don't think that ever ends. I don't think that ever ends.
That's true.
It's
That
an
is true.
ongoing journey.
Yeah.
We're ever evolving.
Yeah.
And some of us, like myself, are a little bit obsessed with it. And
That's
helping
a good
others.
obsession though, right? Isn't it?
Well, it's how I turned my pain to my purpose.
Yeah.
And so that's when Haikomi changed my life so much. It transformed my work with my clients so much. I got certified in it.
Wow.
I even teacher assisted in some of the courses. And then I got certified in eating psychology as I had healed
Interesting.
my body image and food issues. Yep. And then I became the go-to psychologist in Edmonton for food, body image, and those are doorways into self-love.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, and thanks for sharing that. That's a pretty crazy journey, but so authentic. Do you find like if we can talk about women for a minute, is that something that would you say impacts a lot of women?
Yes, and men actually.
Okay.
Yep, and men. So when I was specializing in that field, yes, predominantly more women would come, but also like I was specializing not in eating disorders, which means you must meet the criteria in order to have the diagnosis. So I actually specialized in disordered eating. So we didn't meet the criteria. I did not for binge eating.
Right.
And we're still struggling mentally, emotionally, physically.
Yeah.
And so people who resonated with my story came to see me because they're like, I have emotional eating, binge eating, I restrict my food, but I don't meet an eating disorder.
You know, it kind of makes me wonder, like the other day I had a guy come to my house because my wife and I, we applied for some life insurance.
Yeah.
Just because we bought another property and that's how we insure the property. And anyways, you know, they put you on the BMI thing.
Right.
And it's like, oh, do you fit into that BMI thing? And of course, I don't actually know anyone who does.
No.
And yet for some reason, they keep using these things, even though you have Asian people with different body type and African, like, you know, and it's like, I don't know, maybe there's some white European dude out there who fits that, but I haven't met him.
I'm obese based on the BMI.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
But But I think some of that diagnostic criteria can be like that too. It's like, oh, you don't fit the criteria, but that doesn't mean I'm properly functional.
Yes.
Right.
Because it's how we feel.
Yeah.
If we're not feeling joyful, we're not feeling like we absolutely, completely love ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not feeling worthy.
Yeah.
Then that's an issue.
And because food is like, it impacts our body image, but it's also very emotional. Like, I mean, my goodness, like, it's not like I'm just eating to survive like an animal.
Yes.
There's such an emotional context and spiritual.
Yes.
Right?
And I mean, when we think about food as love too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, family gatherings, there's always food. Functions, there's always food. And it's a nourishing way.
Yeah.
And so there's all these mixed messages around our relationship with food. And
Very cool.
Yes.
So then you went through that, and then you go from psychologist to...
Yeah. So then what happened was... I was seeing the transformation in my group therapy programs and my one-on-ones. And for me at this point, because I had turned my pain to my purpose and helping others really, really embody their self-love, like really being able to live in the truth of who they really are and then express it from that place and then have what they desire. So it's be, do, and have. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to make more impacts. My soul was just like on fire.
That's awesome.
And so I became the first psychologist in Alberta to create an online program in 2015.
Wow.
That was a lot of red tape.
Yeah,
and,
I bet.
and I was like, nope, I'm going to figure it out legally and ethically. And I did. And the doors opened. Yep. And you know, Abe, at this
Congratulations.
point, thank you.
Yeah.
I was still not super intuitive at this point. It was starting to open. I had become an energy worker as well. So it had opened up a lot. And I hired coaches to help me open up my intuition even more. So I had become more spiritual at this point. And what happened was, as soon as I put out the online program, doors opened. So I got my first international speaking gig and a magazine cover for a women's fitness community. And I got to write a 4-page article on how to flex your self-love muscle.
Nice.
And on this cover, I was clearly not photoshopped. I clearly did not diet. I think I just had Logan, my now 10-year-old, like that year. So it had been a year out. So you know, I was very healthy looking, but definitely not what you would see on a women's fitness magazine.
That's so cool.
Or typical, right?
Yeah.
And so what happened was women started to write to me. I did not expect this from outside of Alberta who's seen this magazine. Yeah. And they're like, can we work with you?
Wow.
And I'm like, no, because I'm licensed. Right. You can run my online program though. Yeah. But it frustrated me because I was like, I could, you know, if I wasn't licensed, I could.
Totally, yeah.
So that got me thinking, fast forward, I hired a business coach and it started out as a self-love coaching business. Yeah. And I speak a lot, as you know.
Absolutely.
I speak a lot, and then I was able to build my business very quickly. In fact, I built my coaching business to 6 figures, working only part-time.
That's fantastic.
In the first year.
That's awesome.
So I was just like, thank you. Clearly there's a need here. And I wasn't specifically specializing in food and body image anymore. It was speaking at lots of entrepreneurial events, and people would hire me and ask me, can you help me get out of my own way and build a life and business that I deeply desire? I'm like,
That's fantastic. So how has the, and again, thank you for sharing that. It's just so awesome. How has your background as a psychologist helped you in coaching, right? I mean, it's not required to be a coach, but I'm sure it's been very helpful, right?
Very, very tremendously helpful. Yeah. Especially to this day, I still use Haikomi. It's one of the main approaches. Yeah. Psychology is the foundation of how I work as a leadership transformational coach. Yeah, absolutely. And working with my leaders, my clients who are leaders and their teams, you know, so much of it is understanding the psychology. Yeah. You know, really that's like 80%, it's only like 20% action, right?
Yeah.
So it's, and so with Haikomi, what's beautiful is it works on a subconscious level, and I can really shift people on the cellular level really quickly.
Nice.
So it's working with developmental trauma, or, we can think of it as inner child.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which all, like, if you're sitting there listening to this and you're like, that's hokey pokey, like it all matters,
neuroscience.
I was thinking, it is. And it's kind of like if you get a car accident, yes, it was in the past, but until you fix the car is still damaged, right? And sometimes people say, well, it's in the past, it doesn't matter. But of course it matters. You have to fix it. Now, that's a lifetime journey. But if you're in leadership, you will find yourself getting triggered far quicker. You'll find your inadequacies and sense of insecurity, maybe even self-sabotage coming out quicker. And so I think that's why a lot of the work you do is so helpful.
Thank you. And not just within us, but maybe even with the team that we lead, right? Like, managing people, and then managing, like, looking at how people go into relationships with each other on the team is also really important. Yeah. And I want to speak, this is one of my passions, is speaking to how trauma does get stored in the body. That's why we have subconscious thoughts. It's where it's held. Right. And so even though consciously we are thinking a specific way, like what I want to, let's say, manifest, or what I want to vision, and then we come up against blocks. Those blocks of whether it's like imposter syndrome, that one's mine. Whenever I level up, I notice my own imposter syndrome comes up, feeling like a fraud.
So true. So true.
Do I know enough? Yeah. Maybe I should get more courses done. And I love taking courses, though. Like, it comes from a passion.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's the piece, is like, everything on the outside might look similar. Like, so for me, I still eat very healthy. I choose to. I have a mantra, body before business, right? Where I really take care of my mind, my body, so that I can go into life and to business really at full capacity.
But it's probably now driven by something different than it was, right?
Correct. And so that's exactly where I was going with. It can look the same. You know, I can look like I'm eating like a bodybuilder, and yet it's my mentality, it's my belief system that's very different. I'm coming from a place of, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired. Oh my gosh, it's not, I'm not enough. I need to get more courses. It's from a place of like, I am just so excited. I'm a lifelong learner. I value education so much.
Yeah. And that for me is the key, right? When people talk about fitness and sustainability, it has to come from within. And I know that sounds a little cheesy, but it's actually true.
It's so true.
If you don't have it for the right reasons, it will last as long as those New Year's resolutions last. And then you beat up on yourself even more because you're like, see, I tried again. And it's like, well, you tried, but you didn't try in a way that will allow you to succeed long term. And so I think this is really good because there's no shame or judgment in that.
Absolutely not. We're all human.
Yeah, and so we're going to do another interview with Rosalind in our next episode where we want to drill more into the kind of work that she does, particularly with flourishing workplace and organizations. But tell us a little bit about where you are now in the sense of the kind of work that you're doing and family and all of that stuff, because it's just really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Where should I start?
So right now you're coaching full-time. You left, quote unquote, the licensed psychologist
That
route.
was a really long time ago. So I've been in my coaching business for about 7.5 years, going on 8. Wow. Which sounds...
Long time.
And so I was a psychologist for over 10 years. And I love the ability to be working internationally. I can work with anyone, anywhere.
Freedom.
Thank goodness for online. And I've pivoted quite a bit from coaching. I feel like I'm circling back around, actually, because I was coaching executives and women in business. I coached men always as well, but predominantly women at this point. And then I went, because as I evolve, my business always evolves, right? And then I went into working with life and spiritual coaches and healers and practitioners because I'm one myself, and I was very passionate about helping them bring themselves out, stop hiding, show up on social media, marketing, messaging, client attraction, soulful selling. And I had academies for that and coaches working with my clients as well. And then last year I decided, because I was guided to intuitively. And I've always worked with you in terms of like all this, because I can't just do one thing.
Yeah.
I also did certify people be life coaches through
Absolutely.
Flourishing, because
Yeah.
Abe asked me to partner up. I'm like, yes, because
absolutely.
anything you do, Abe, is gold
Right.
and turns to gold. So yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so that's where Dan and I had come in. And so in the last year, we're in, I'm like, what month are we? September 2024.
Yeah, 2024. Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's hard to keep track. You've had a lot going on
made
too.
the pivot.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yes, it's been an venture in my business, and I've been loving working now with leaders and teams. I work very intimately with leaders.
Okay.
I open up something called the Akashic Records, which is very intuitive. It's our soul's library. It's intuitive work, so I'm able to tap into our soul's library,
Nice.
my clients' future and past lives, and being able to access information from their angels and ancestors. So it's very powerful. But then I bring in the Haikomi, which is really, really like such a beautiful mix in helping them shift their subconscious blind spots,
Right.
and then help them have that aligned path for taking inspired action.
Yeah, and maybe one final question. One thing I've noticed about you is you are not afraid to pivot, right?
Well, let's actually reframe that. I am
Okay.
shitting my pants. But
Yeah.
I will not let the fear drive the bus, because what I do know about myself is fear is just false evidence appearing real.
Right.
And it's all my mindset and it's my belief. So I do believe it's very, very helpful to have a coach.
Yes.
Very helpful to have peers who are going where you're going or where you already want to be. Putting myself into in environments where I know it's going to help me grow personally and professionally.
Right.
And it does bring up fear. It makes me feel so uncomfortable, but I know it's aligned, and I will work through that, because it'll pass. They're just feelings. Feelings have never killed anyone. So yes, I fear to pivot because all my imposter syndrome stuff comes up, but I just don't let it drive the bus.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great way to conclude this, because, I'm sure that there's somebody listening to this or watching this right now, and you're contemplating some pivots or some transitions or some changes. And I love what you said, and that is, yes, I'm afraid, but I still lean in, because, sometimes we can stay stuck.
Yeah.
And we wonder why it's getting worse, and we need to embrace that change. We need to launch into that new thing, start that business, start that relationship, end that relationship maybe, like there's so many examples of change and transition, and I really admire you for that. And we want to encourage you, right? If you're feeling afraid, if you're feeling cautious, a little overly cautious, maybe some anxiety, look in your soul, find your strength,
and your purpose. It's really driven by purpose.
Stay aligned.
Yes, our fuel is from our purpose.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to this episode of the Flourish podcast. And at Flourishing Workplace, we are absolutely committed to helping you change the world by changing the workplace. Imagine being able to bring into your workplace somebody like Rosalind, and just the breadth and the depth of the skill and the care that you would get. And so please check us out, flourishingworkplace.com. You can set up a discovery session, and make sure you tune into our next episode, where we will continue our conversation with Rosalind. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.